It's absolutely outrageous, and you'll pardon me if I'm not impressed in any way by Rand Paul's fiscal responsibility virtue signaling. Rand Paul presented tissue paper avoidance of the $1.5 trillion tax cut that added hundreds of billions of dollars to our deficit. And now he stands up at the last minute after 15 years of blood, sweat, and tears from the 9/11 community to say that it's all over now. Now we're going to balance the budget on the backs of the 9/11 first responder community. Brett, this is about what kind of society do we have. At some point, we have to stand up for the people who have always stood up for us. And at this moment in time, maybe cannot stand up for themselves due to their illnesses and their injuries. And what Rand Paul did today on the Senate was outrageous. He is a guy that put us in hundreds of billions of dollars of debt. He was the 51st vote on that cut. And now he's going to tell us that $1 billion a year over 10 years is just too much for us to handle. You know, there's some things that they have no trouble putting on the credit card. But somehow when it comes to the 9/11 first responder community, the cops, the firefighters, the construction workers, the volunteers, the survivors, all of a sudden, man, we got to go through this. This program has already been running for 5 years. No fraud. It was testified when we went in front of Congress. The special paymaster testified. No fraud, no waste, no abuse. Yeah. Mike Lee, we met in his office 5 years ago. He looked us in the eye. He looked Ray Pfeiffer in the eye, who unfortunately is no longer with us, and said he was going to look into it. He is the reason that we've had to go back again for this new one, and now he wants to put another cap on it that's going to make John Field and all these other tenacious yet ill first responders drag themselves back to Washington to put their hats in their hands and beg for something that this country should have done 14 years ago.
You know,
it's an abomination.
We asked both senators for a statement. Senator Paul's office sent a statement saying Senator Paul is not blocking anything. He's simply seeking to pay for it. As with any bill, Senator Paul always believes it needs to be paid for. Senator Paul is simply offering an amendment which other senators support to pay for this legislation. Obviously, after all that you've said here and attending the funeral of your colleague, Luis Alvarez, John Field, that's not where you are.
No, listen, Senator Paul and Senator Lee are opportunists. They're bottom feeders, and any statement that they come out with is doesn't hold water with me. You can't cherry pick and choose when you want to be a conservative fiscal hawk. That's just insulting to our intelligence, and shame on them. They lack humanity, they lack leadership, and they just do this because, listen, Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, Mike Lee, even their own colleagues don't like them. We don't like them. And when we get this bill passed, then we beat them again. And we're going to walk out and we're going to hold our chins up high and our chest out, and we're going to say we beat Rand Paul and Mike Lee. You know, we met Mike Lee a couple months ago, his staff. They promised, they swore up and down that they were not going to get in the way of this. Mike Lee, you're a liar.
But the other thing, too, Brett, is to remember at what point this is either necessary or it's not. And everybody agrees that it's necessary. So we're either doing this or without. There's either a need or it's not. Your budgetary priorities are either moved by a moral compass or they're not. And this is an outrageous place for them to take a stand and cause, once again, pain and heartache and suffering within a community that has felt so much of that over these past few years and is going to be suffering more.
And Brett, you know, this is what people see as a major defeat today, is a minor setback, and it's just going to propel us to a bigger win. And we're confident that after meeting with Mitch McConnell, that he's kept his word and he's working diligently to get this bill on the floor for a straight up and down vote. And that's what we always wanted. The unanimous consent was easy, but we want a straight up and down vote because we didn't get it in 2010, we didn't get it in 2015, right. And we want to walk out watching the fruition of our work come to an end.
It's the same song and dance they've given us for 14 years now. This program has proven itself. It has shown itself to be faithful to the statute. It has shown itself to be fair to the claimant, and it has shown itself to be respectful to the taxpayers. And that's all we can ask of a program. But most importantly, it brings just a moment's peace to a community that has suffered and continues to suffer.
This is Jon Stewart taking aim at Republican Senators Rand Paul and Mike Lee amid their opposition to a bill that would have extended the 9/11 Victims Compensation Fund until the year 2090. Rand Paul unilaterally stopped the legislation from the unanimous consent it needed to pass.
President, I ask unanimous consent that as if in legislative session, the Senate proceed to calendar number 153, H.R. 1327, that the bill be considered read a third time and passed, and the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.
Objection.
Mr. President,
Senator from Kentucky.
reserving the right to object, it has long been my feeling that we need to address our massive debt in this country. We have a $22 trillion debt. We're adding debt at about $1 trillion a year. And therefore, any new spending that we are approaching, any new program that's going to have the longevity of 70, 80 years should be offset by cutting spending that's less valuable. We need to, at the very least, have this debate. I will be offering up an amendment if this bill should come to the floor, but until then, I will object.
Now, the Victims Compensation Fund, or VCF, provides money to those who've contracted disease after being exposed to toxic debris from the rubble on 9/11. And whereas this would have ensured funding throughout the lives of the 9/11 first responders, those who ran into the rubble when everyone else ran away, the bill now goes back to the Senate for a full vote. And rest assured, it will be passed. The legislation sailed through the House 402 to 12 and has a staggering 73 co-sponsors in a Senate that isn't able to agree on what day of the week it is. So when it finally comes up for a full vote, it will become law. But that's not the point. The point is that 9/11 first responders are now made to wait again. The people who showed up on the darkest day in American history, the people who sacrificed their health and in many cases their lives to rescue other Americans, are now made to beg hat in hand yet again because a couple senators from deep red states suddenly decided that they've rediscovered their fiscal responsibility. The same fiscal responsibility, mind you, that conveniently disappeared when both Rand Paul and Mike Lee voted for the $1.5 trillion tax bill that exploded our deficit. The tax bill that Republicans promised would pay for itself and didn't. The tax bill that Republicans promised wouldn't just lead to stock buybacks and executive salary raises, and did. And yet, strangely, there was no grandstanding from these principled conservatives when they voted to sacrifice our national debt to give themselves a tax break. How very unexpected. Not a word about Trump having taken a staggering 195 separate multi-million-dollar taxpayer-funded golf trips to the properties he still owns and profits from. Again, no grandstanding from our principled conservatives, and I wonder why.
President Trump and Rand Paul playing a quick round of golf in New Jersey this weekend.
And yet, amazingly, there was no equivocation about those 9/11 first responders when both Paul and Lee were tweeting platitudes about them. Lee explicitly tweeted the words, "We will never forget the victims of September 11th and the heroic first responders." Of course, this tweet was years before Twitter raised its character limit, because if it were the full 280 characters, we'd have realized that Lee's tweet actually said, "We will never forget the victims of September 11th and the heroic first responders, unless doing so requires any financial expenditures that won't benefit me personally, in which case I'll hold their lifeline hostage to balance the budget when I feel the need to grandstand about my selectively fiscal responsibility." Yeah, those old school tweets could be deceiving that way. And Americans should remember this the next time anyone from the GOP tries to once again lay claim to the idea of patriotism in this country. Because while it's easy to tweet empty rhetoric, actions speak leagues louder than words. So Mike Lee and Rand Paul can go home knowing that their opposition to the VCF is the only reason that our first responders won't sleep easy tonight. And that's a shame, because who'd have ever thought that in the face of such heroism from those heroes on 9/11, we'd see such cowardice from a couple of Republicans in the Senate.